Hello fellow microscopists. So welcome back. I have a new video for you today, and the topic of today's video is going to be contamination when you are performing TEM. Specifically, what is contamination, why we get it, why it's bad, and how to manage it so it doesn't impact your results. So what I want to start by showing you right now is a HAADF-STEM image of a silicon sample along a 110 zone axis. And so if you can see this right now, I've got a field of view that's really small, and I should be able to see atomic resolution detail. And this is a good specimen, but I don't see any detail in my image. I'm also running at appropriate conditions for atomic res STEM. I've got spot size of 10 and the right C2 aperture selected, but I don't have, clearly I'm not seeing the detail I want. And it's not because of something that I've set up with a microscope. It's because I'm getting contamination buildup on the specimen. Okay, so right now I'm at an indicated mag of 7.2 million. So if I come mag out here just a little bit, you can see what this looks like. All right, I'm going to go out a little more. Search mode. All right, so what you see here, and the sample is kind of drifting, so that's why it looks elongated. But what you see here is this giant strip, okay, where I had been in terms of my field of view. Okay, so this is contamination buildup on the sample. Okay, and so what that's doing is it's adding to the total thickness of the sample. And so of course that's not good if you're trying to get good high resolution detail, because that increases your total thickness, and that's the golden rule of TEM, is thinner is better. Okay, so so that's what contamination is, and that's why it's bad. So it obscures fine details in your image. So this is usually mostly an issue when you're doing atomic resolution STEM or high resolution, aka lattice imaging, or doing seabed. Okay, so these are again scenarios where you're using a fine probe or you're putting high current into a really small area. This can also be an issue when you're doing EDS in STEM mode as well with high current. This usually isn't something that manifests when you're doing weak beam dark field or 2-beam imaging. So it's usually with high resolution imaging applications, although as I just said, it can happen also when you're doing things like EDS as well, okay, in STEM mode. So what I'm going to do here really quickly, and again the key word here is quickly, okay, because this is a time dependent process of building up this contamination accumulation. But I'm going to quickly here just move, switch to search mode again. I'm just going to quickly move here to a spot that hasn't been contaminated that badly. Okay, and then you'll see so I can still get atomic res detail. Obviously every time I talk it vibrates. Okay, so this area hasn't been contaminated that badly yet, but over time I'm going to see the same problem, and in fact you can see it happening right now. I'm losing the detail. right? So it's slowly going away. Like the contrast I was seeing, those nice, well-separated features are going away. And so this obviously is bad because you don't get a nice image. If you saw my original video on atomic res STEM, I did encounter this very problem in that video. This is part of the reason why I wanted to make this video, was to specifically address how to deal with that. Okay, so now if I mag out here, what you see then is you see search mode. Yeah, you see like this. Delete this. You see this like white area here where I have a contamination buildup. And again, this is, I've increased the total thickness. I'm going to go ahead and do an acquire. Alright, so I finished the acquire. So again, you see this bright round buildup where I was imaging at a smaller field of view. And it's a little hard to see because the field of view here is a little bit larger, but I can see atomic res detail out here where I wasn't imaging before, where I don't have the same contamination buildup. Okay, so where does this come from? Why do we end up with this problem? Well, the basic process behind getting contamination buildup in your samples is that you start with precursor organic molecules. Okay, they're usually hydrocarbons. These are things that are kind of oily in nature. They're everywhere. They're on your skin, they're in the air, and they can end up on your specimen surface. So if they are on your specimen surface, the electron beam interacts with them. It causes a polymerization of the precursor molecules into a solid chunk of polymer, which is what you see here. Okay, and ultimately gives us our decreased image quality. Okay, so now the question is, because we've defined what the contamination is, how it happens, and why it's bad, we want to discuss how to deal with it. Okay, obviously. So your first line of defense, okay, actually there's a few lines of defense here, but your first line of defense is this guy. Okay, plasma clean your samples. So if your samples can obviously withstand and tolerate the plasma cleaning process, you should always do that before you insert them into the TEM, especially if you're going to do any type of high resolution imaging. Again, 1 to 2 minutes in this is usually fine. So that's your first line of defense. Before that, though, another way to ensure that your sample stays as clean as possible is to always image it as soon as you can after you're finished making it. So a lot of the specimens I make are fib lamellas, and I always try to plan it so that I can perform the TEM on the lamella immediately after I'm done with the fib, because that really is the cleanest that the sample will be, is right after the fib process is done. Even so, I do still plasma clean the samples before I put them in the TEM, but that basically ensures that the samples will be as clean as they possibly can be. But in this sample here, okay, I actually did plasma clean this. Okay, I did a 2-minute plasma clean on this sample before I put it in the TEM, and I'm still getting, a bad contamination problem in here. Okay, so this is something that I have empirically seen happen if the samples are old, and this is an old sample. The sample is multiple years old. Okay, that with older samples, even if you plasma clean them, you may still see this as a problem. Okay, so the plasma clean is not this this miracle that will completely alleviate any issues. Okay, it does work. It works better the newer that the samples are, though. So if the sample gets old, it just gets so much stuff on it. It's sort of like if you leave something out in the open, it will collect dust. It's no different with your TEM samples. Even if you store them under vacuum or you store them under controlled conditions, you'll still end up ultimately probably with them getting some of this contamination on them. Okay, so let's say then you have a sample and you plasma cleaned it and it's still giving you problems, or you can't plasma clean it for some reason, okay, but you want to do high resolution imaging on it and you're getting these contamination problems. So what are you going to do at that point? Okay, well, there is something else you can do. All is not lost at this point. Okay, and this is your last line of defense, and it's also a very effective line of defense too. Okay, but hopefully you don't need to go to this this step. Okay, hopefully you plan it out so you image the samples when they're as new as possible, and you plasma clean them immediately beforehand. And if you do that, usually this isn't a problem. Okay, but if it's still a problem, what you need to do is you need to perform what's called a beam shower. Okay, so what is a beam shower? Well, first of all, we're in STEM mode right now. Okay, so we don't want to be in STEM mode when we do this. So I'm going to go out of STEM mode here. Okay, we're out of STEM mode, and now my beam tab, I'm at spot size 1, which is fine. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead now. I'm gonna mag out to, we'll go to 6200 indicated, but I'm at a large field of view here. Okay. All right, there's my beam on the screen. I've got in, as I was doing high-res STEM, I've got in the number 1 C2 aperture. So normally for just regular TEM, I put in the number 2. But what I'm going to do now instead is I'm going to put this on the 4. Okay, that of course is the largest C2 aperture. So I've got spot size 1 and C2 aperture 4. So I have a tremendously high current that's reaching the sample. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead really quickly here and just realign roughly the C2 aperture. Okay, again, come back here, right, adjust to bring it back. I'll do one more iteration, that should be enough. Okay, right there, okay? All right, so now what I have is a really high current reaching the sample, but it's spread out over a large area. Okay? So what the aim of this is now, and this is called a beam shower. What the aim of this is to basically not remove contamination on the sample, but basically to take the contamination that's already on the sample and freeze it in place so that it can't accumulate in any one place. Okay? So this doesn't remove contamination, but basically instead of all of my precursors piling up in one spot and making this giant knot of polymerized contamination, I do this, and instead, okay, that polymerization happens over a much larger area and a very thinner layer, as opposed to a thick layer in a small area. Okay, so this is what's known as a beam shower. Okay, and so how long do you need to do this? Generally speaking, 10 to 20 minutes. Okay, should be enough. I'm going to let this go ahead and run for 20 minutes. Of course, you want to do this over the area that you're going to analyze, okay? But yes, you let this go for maybe 10-20 minutes, and then once that's done, we'll pick the video back up and I will go back into STEM mode, and we should now not have the same contamination problems that we were having before. Alright, so our beam shower is done. So I did the shower for about 20 minutes, and I already came back into STEM mode and realigned, and I have the HAADF-STEM image going, and I've already been scanning here for a couple minutes. Okay, same settings I was at before, but you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and adjust the focus. Yeah, but see now, see, I'm seeing detail now that I couldn't see before. And unlike before, I'm not losing it. Okay, so my beam shower worked. Alright, so now what I'm going to do here, just to show you, I'm going to mag out to where I was before, and now we shouldn't see that same blob that we saw last time. So I'm going to go out to, I think it was 1.3 million indicated. Okay, so I don't see that same thing there anymore. Okay, so the beam shower worked. Now again, the beam shower doesn't remove contamination, it just freezes the contamination that's there in place so that it doesn't accumulate in one spot when you're imaging. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take an acquire here, and then we'll do a side-by-side comparison so you can see the before and after, if you will. Okay, so there's my acquired image after I did the beam shower, and there's the one before. So here's the blob from the contamination, and I don't see it here. These aren't contamination, these are actually little depressions in the sample. This is basically the best atomic res image I could get before doing the shower, before the contamination just built up to the point where we couldn't see the atomic detail. But then after doing the shower, okay, this is what it looks like. And so that's very, very markedly improved in terms of the contrast and the separation and the features that can be observed as a result of doing the shower between here and here. Okay, so take a look at that difference. Showered, no shower. Showered, no showered. So definitely we got a benefit from doing the shower. If this happens, you should keep in mind that there's really nothing you can do at this point. This area is basically a waste now. You can't really remove this. I suppose you could, if you had a fib sample, you could try to put it back in and perform fib on it. But unless you have some way to physically remove this, it's basically stuck there. So plasma cleaning has been shown to be somewhat effective at removing this if it's already on there, but I think that's kind of limited. The best way, of course, is to just not get any on there in the first place, like we see here. So just again, yeah, there we go. And so you can see even now, right? I had the beam frozen here, okay, before I was scanning, and even still after the shower, because I had the beam sitting in that spot, we are still getting contamination buildup. Okay, I mean, if we weren't really seeing it before because the beam wasn't stationary, but even after the shower, if you just sit the beam in one spot, you can end up with a contamination issue. So this is going to conclude the video on contamination and what it is, how to address it why it's bad. If you have any questions or comments, you want a topic you'd like to see covered, please let me know. Continue to spread the word of the channel. I want to have an open discussion, create a nice video library covering different TEM topics. So I thank you all very much for your support, and I'll see you again soon.